Yo guys, it's Slyroh. You already know that it is the end of the year, which means that it is finally time for me to rank every single video game that came out this year that I played from worst to best. This year I was more on top of current video games than I ever have been in my life, and now I can finally take all of that and put that into this video. By my count, I have played 22 different video games that came out in 2022, and most of them were good, but not all of them. But this should be pretty simple. If a game is not on this list, I haven't played it. If there's a game that you think I missed out on, let me know about it in the comments below. And I plan to continue to be on top of my game, covering a bunch of different video games in 2023, so make sure you subscribe if you are not already so you can keep up with my opinions on current games. But enough with the intro, we've got a huge list to cover and I don't want to waste any time. So here it is, all 22 games that I played that came out in 2022, ranked from worst to best. The worst game to come out this year, and honestly one of my least favorite games of all time, is Digimon Survive. And this should not surprise anybody that watched my playthrough of it. Man, I did not have a great time with this game at all. I was very surprised that this game even came out at all, and honestly a part of me wishes that it never did. The characters and writing in this game were mostly bad, and at their best they were barely mediocre. And that's kind of the problem with this game, is when Digimon Survive is at its absolute peaks, it is maybe a mediocre game at best. And of course, this game is not always at its peak. The tactics gameplay leaves a lot to be desired, as I've seen it done better in many other video games. The characters are inconsistent with their decision making, and it really makes it hard to root for almost any of them. And in this game that supposedly changes based on the decisions that you make, there are a lot of major decisions that you can't even properly make until New Game Plus. I feel like this game could have been executed better in so many different ways, but the fact is it just didn't do it for me. And so I have no choice but to label it as the worst game of 2022. We'll take a very, very slight step up, as my number 21 is Salt and Sacrifice. I was really looking forward to this game, and this really let me down in a lot of ways. Salt and Sanctuary had a great connected world and a real sense of progression, but Salt and Sacrifice just had a bunch of portals that took you to different worlds where you would fight mages and bosses that all felt very samey. A lot of the gameplay revolved around you grinding for materials so you could go do extra things, and it just felt all sort of disconnected and just not really what I was looking for. I think as a game, it's not terrible, but it really just went and made decisions in a direction different from what I would have wanted, and it became so apparent to me that this isn't the type of game for me after just a couple hours of playing. I put it back down, and I haven't regretted that decision since. Now we're going to go from bad to mediocre, as my number 20 is Asterigos Curse of the Stars. I wanted to make a video about this game to give my thoughts on it, but I honestly just couldn't think of enough to say, because I really think this might be the most mediocre game of all time that I've ever played. This is an action RPG that reminds me of Kena Bridge of Spirits a little bit, but I just feel like this failed in a lot of ways for me. It didn't really have the same sense of atmosphere with the visuals or the music for me. Exploration didn't really seem worth it, as there wasn't really any rewards that you could get that you really needed. You start the game with every weapon that you could possibly use, and even though you can upgrade them, I just didn't really find any of them all that much fun to use. Which brings me to my main complaint of the game, is that the combat just has no weight to it. There are times that I would get hit where I wouldn't be able to tell that I got hit, just because there's no sort of weight or feedback that I would feel that made me feel like I was taking damage. And the same thing would happen with the enemies. I would be connecting with hits on the enemies, but there was no weight behind it, so it didn't really feel satisfying to hit enemies, because sometimes I wasn't even sure if I was hitting, and then all of a sudden the enemy would go down, and I'm like, oh, I guess I was doing damage. Well, I didn't know. I mean, yes, there's like a visual health bar on screen, so like you can see that, but I'm just saying that there's no like weight behind any of your actions, which is a little disappointing for a game like this. I think the story was fine, but I am not one to really get invested in video game stories that much, so that's not really going to be something that hooks me. But also, to be fair, I didn't really play all that much of this game. I played a couple hours and then decided to put it down. I was going to pick it up later, but honestly, I just haven't really felt the urge to try and play this again. I played it again just to get the footage that you're seeing on screen, and it kind of just confirmed everything that I already had to say about it. Coming in at number 19 is going to be 2 Point Campus. It's been a while since I played any sort of simulation game, and I saw some videos on YouTube about this game, and it was free on Game Pass, so I decided to check it out. And honestly, it's a fine game. My main thing is that I just kind of got bored after a couple hours. I felt like it had a loop that wasn't super entertaining for me. This also had a sort of weird, I don't know if difficulty curve is the right word for it, but they sort of take you step by step and hold your hand through a tutorial, and then they sort of let you go, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff that you're supposed to figure out on your own, even though they teach some of the basics. It's a very weird system. Like, there was a lot of stuff that I had to just, like, look up online to be like, wait, how does this mechanic work, that I don't feel like was adequately explained in-game. That could just be me, but also this is a subjective list of what I liked and disliked in video games this year. So, subjectively, it wasn't my favorite thing that happened to me. But it's not a bad game, and it did keep me entertained for a few hours, so I'll give it that. Coming in at number 18 is going to be OlliOlli World. This is another game that I meant to do a video about on the channel, but I just wasn't really able to put my thoughts about this game into words adequately. This is a sort of fun skateboard platform game, that has a really nice sense of speed from start to end of the level. The levels are short and pretty easy, though at the end of the game, or towards the end of the game, you know, they give you these like challenge scores that you're supposed to be trying to hit, and I wouldn't even be coming close to them, and the obstacles would be hard to get through. So beating a level was easy, but if you wanted to do some of the optional objectives, some of them felt really impossible to me. I always felt like there must be some mechanics that I'm missing out on to be able to get way higher scores, but once I made it to the end of the game, I just didn't really have a strong desire to keep trying to play more. This game is fine and even good in small doses, but I don't think that it's one of the better ones of the year. At number 17, I'm putting Taiko no Tatsujin the Drum Master, which is a rhythm game series that I think has been around for a long time, but I hadn't heard about it until this year, and this particular version was on Game Pass, which is why I decided to check it out, and it's a pretty good time. It's a good rhythm game, and the soundtrack has some songs from like anime and classical music, and some pop songs. They're all like cover versions, except for maybe the classical music. I don't quite remember, but yeah, this is just a rhythm game, and it literally only uses 2 different drum notes, and it just sort of alternates the pattern, and I think that's sort of what limits the replayability. Even though the soundtrack is really, really good for the songs that they picked, there's only so many times that you can play through. You also have this sort of in-game currency that you can earn by getting high scores, but you can really only do that if you get like a perfect clear, which is like you can't miss a single note, which is like, that's a hard thing to expect for a player. But if you can get the in-game currency, you can buy fun little sounds, so that way your drum could make a regular drum noise, it could make like a drum kit noise, a synth drum. They have crazy things, like there's like anime girl sound effects, you can just have it make all these crazy things, there's like claps, you can buy different drum sounds to make crazy stuff, and you know, all that stuff is very fun. You can customize the little drum guy that's there. There's a lot of cool things that there are to it, but I do think that the replayability is a little bit limited just because there's only the 2 notes that you play, and it just alternates, and despite the fact that there's only 2 notes, it can actually get really hard just because of how they mix and match, how they put them in. I find it to be either very easy or very impossible, and it's kind of hard to strike a good balance of beating a song and having it feel satisfying for me. But I do still like this, and if this looks like your jam, absolutely check it out. It's still on Game Pass, and it's a solid time, just not one of the best video games of this year. Coming in at number 16, I have Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. No relation to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which is the game that I first played to first get into Call of Duty, and then I played a couple of Call of Duty games past that, sort of fell off, and I was sort of peer pressured into buying this game, and honestly, it plays pretty nicely. It definitely gives that sort of classic Call of Duty feel. It's got really good controls, and it feels satisfying to play. It also has a skill rank like matchmaking system that I personally like because I'm not very good at the game. So the fact that I can go online and get matched with other people who aren't very good at the game makes me feel like I can still play and get some kills in a lobby, which is nice. To be fair, and I'm only talking about multiplayer, I've never cared about a Call of Duty campaign, so I didn't play the campaign. So that is what this ranking is here for. It's just a good Call of Duty game. I'm just not really the audience to be playing Call of Duty anymore. I just don't really play that many multiplayer games. I prefer the single player experience, so there's not much higher that this could go, but this is a solid time. One downside that I really have to bring up is, man, I hate turning on this game. Every time I turn on this game, there's always an update that it needs to restart the game, and then I finally make it on, and it bombards me with, buy this battle pass, and it will bombard me with, like, an unskippable cutscene to try and advertise something else, or play this game mode, and I'm just like, yo, chill. I know what I want to play. Let me get to the menu, and just pick what I want to play. The first time I got on, I accidentally started the campaign, which, like, how does that even happen? Because, like, the campaign and the multiplayer are, like, under different sections. The user experience is so terrible. They need to do something better. I don't play that many multiplayer games, so maybe this is just how multiplayer games are now, but man, it is terrible trying to find what I want. The first time that I went on and tried to find free-for-all, it was, like, buried behind a different game mode that you had to, like, do some stuff with, and it was not a pleasant experience. But once you're finally into a game, it is very satisfying, and if you're a veteran of these types of games, then it probably is no big deal to you, but as a somewhat of a newcomer coming back to online multiplayer games after quite a long time of playing one, it was not a great experience for me. But it is a fun Call of Duty game if you like that sort of thing. At number 15, I am putting Trombone Champ, the best trombone-based rhythm game ever created. If you haven't seen anything about this game, you're in for a treat because it is funny. The characters are funny, the noises are funny, just playing a trombone along with these songs, it's very wacky, it's out of this world. The game has a sense of charm with its style, the backgrounds that play, some of the songs that play. I'll play some of them for you now so you can see what they sound like when I'm playing them. This is another one where you can unlock different sounds and looks for your character in trombone, but it's actually way harder to do in this game. I haven't figured out how to do like half of the customization stuff in this game, so I wouldn't really call it user-friendly in that sense. This also suffers a bit from the replayability issue, though there are mods that you can get to add like infinite songs into this game. The game also hits you with some of the funniest fun facts that you've ever seen in a game, most of them not being facts, but it's always fun to be like, well, could that be possibly true? Is this believable? But some of them are ridiculous, and it's a fun way to start playing a song. I think once the initial shock sort of wears off of this game and it stops being as funny as it was the first time you played it, I think it sort of settles in to just be a good but not great game. And that's really the only reason that it's here at this list and not higher, because it doesn't do anything that makes it have a special place in my heart, but it is a fun time for when I do play it. Coming in at number 14, I'm putting Thymesia. I made a first impressions type video about this game, and it took a little bit to sell me, but I do think that I enjoy this game. It's not perfect by any means, but I do love the atmosphere. It's very clearly Souls-inspired, but it does a couple of interesting and unique things with its combat to set it apart from other games. My only real complaint with this game is it introduces a feather parry sort of mechanic that you can use to interrupt certain attacks, and I just never found that I could get a consistent timing on it, and I always found dodging out of the way to be way more effective. So it's a little unfortunate that one of the main game mechanics seems like it's not as useful as just dodging out of the way. But this game has some really cool design elements, it's fun to play, it's a fairly short game. I think it's pretty hard in some spots and pretty easy in other spots, and your mileage may vary, but the more you get comfortable with the combat system, the better the game is, and I really enjoyed my time with this game. At number 13, and I really hate to do this, I'm putting Horizon Forbidden West. I know, get it out of your system, call me whatever you want, leave the video, don't actually leave the video, please. I'll try and do my best to explain. Horizon Zero Dawn is one of my favorite video games of all time. And in theory, Forbidden West should hit the same spots for me, because it did a lot of things better, but a lot of things different that, in my opinion, makes it feel worse for me. I personally felt like I wasn't able to explore as much in the same way as I could in the first game. I kept passing by a lot of things that were like, you don't have the ability to access this yet, and I would have to come back later, which is fine. There was also this new like grappling hook type thing that would only really be used to be a thing that I would forget about, and then it would be the solution to a puzzle. And that's another thing, is I really don't like how puzzle focused this game was. I felt like there was a lot of times where my stupid brain just couldn't figure out what in the world I was supposed to do, just for me to look up the answer and be like, how is I supposed to know that, or oh, that's so obvious, why can't I figure this out? And even in game, I feel like Aloy would sometimes be like trying to give a hint or guide me in the right direction, but none of them were ever helpful. She would be like, oh, I need to find a way to go over there, and I'd be like, okay, I know that, but what do I do? Again, this could just be me being bad at video games. Wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last time. But man, I really do hate when a video game makes me feel stupid. I also felt that in some aspects the combat was better, but in other aspects it was worse. My main complaint is the sort of limited ammunition that you were able to have on you. My biggest thing is specifically something like chill water. Like, you could only have 20 on you, and if you need to craft more like ice arrows or ice weapons of sorts, and you would run out, you could only ever have like 20 extra at the ready, and so there's a limited amount that you can have, and if you need more, you either need to go get some from your stash or what have you. In the first game, I liked being able to stockpile a bunch of extras. That way I could use more of the ammo that I do use, and I could get rid of the stuff that I don't use. There was also just a lot of times where I felt like using the spear was a lot more effective than using any sort of ranged attack, which is fine, but it sort of took away some of the satisfaction of, you know, shooting from afar and hitting the right spots and all that, which I guess you can still do, but for some reason it always felt like the easier way out was to just smack things with spears. And my last minor complaint is I really don't understand why they changed the traversal. It used to be where there was like yellow on like certain ledges that you could grab onto, but instead everything that you can grab onto is just invisible unless you know, scan, and then it shows these like yellow lines that so clearly stand out against the terrain. And if you're not using that, how are you knowing where to jump? And if you are using that, it just doesn't look very good. That is one of the most minor things that I could possibly complain about, and it really isn't that big of a deal. The main thing is that I just left a lot of play sessions feeling a little bit underwhelmed. 20 hours into the game, and I just felt like I couldn't really justify continuing on with this game. And if anybody wants to bring up the story, again, I'm not really good with story in video games, and I really couldn't pay attention to most of what was going on in this game. I just wasn't super invested. I was way more invested in Aloy's journey in the first game, and this one just wasn't really doing it for me. It's not bad, I just found the cutscenes to be long and hard to pay attention to, which is just a me thing. And if you're wondering why I'm being so negative, despite the fact that this is like almost halfway through the list and not at the bottom, it's because there are still a lot of good things that this game does. I mean, like I said, the combat for a lot of times does still feel very satisfying, the world looks great, everything sounds great, there's a lot of really cool new machines, there's a lot of crazy side quests that you can do. The one upside of having some of the limited ammo is it really did force me to try out some different combat tactics, which was pretty cool. I did appreciate that. When I first played Horizon Zero Dawn, it didn't really click with me for the first time, and I came back to it at a later date and fell in love with it. And I'm still holding out hope that there's a chance for this game to do the same thing for me as well. But until that happens, I have to keep it at number 13 on this list. Coming in at number 12 is going to be Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I don't really get around to playing a lot of 3D platformers nowadays, but I had a really fun time with Kirby. It really just is good. It's fairly easy to play from start to finish. There's a lot of fun abilities that you can play around with. There's ways to upgrade those abilities so that way they're even more powerful and more fun to use. And this game has optional objectives that you can try and get either on your first time through or on repeat playthroughs, which makes it worth trying to get 100% if you're into that sort of thing. This one, I really just don't have anything super negative to say or anything super amazingly positive to say. This is just a good, solid video game that if you like platformers, you should have been playing this yesterday. I I'm seeing the length of the video, and I do want to sort of pick up the pace here. So, at number 11, I'm putting Grey Heritage Faded Vision, which, for the record, I am still currently playing. There is a playthrough on my channel of me playing this game, and I'm only about halfway through, but I feel pretty comfortable slotting it in here on the list. This is a fun little indie game developed by one person that is clearly inspired off of classic Fire Emblem games, and I feel like that would have been enough, but the more I play, the more that I'm seeing it create its own sense of identity as well. It plays around with different objectives, different map setups. There's a lot more ally units that help in some of the chapters. There's a lot more times where your party is split up due to circumstances. The story has been pretty interesting, the characters are really cool, and this is just a really, really good, solid game that I am looking forward to playing the rest of. Based on the type of game it is, I don't know if it would get that much higher, because once I start reaching the top 10, we're starting to reach really, really high up there, because 2022 was an amazing year for video games. But if you like these sorts of tactics RPGs, you should absolutely be checking this game out, because it is really, really fun, and it is more than just a Fire Emblem fan game. Kicking off our top 10 in a strong way is going to be Neon White. I would have never, ever even bothered with this game if I didn't hear about the hype for this game, and I am so glad that I checked it out. It is very hard to explain what makes it so good, but you just have to play it and experience it to really, really understand it. Each level is very short, and the game has a sort of built-in system that almost requires but rewards you for replaying levels to get faster times, and the ways that you can traverse through the levels is so satisfying to do. The story that plays out is really interesting. You can have little chats with the characters and also do side quests that will have you do levels that have other sort of gimmicks to them as well. This game is constantly introducing new mechanics for you to play around with, and it truly is just one of the most fun games of the year. There was a small time during the middle of the game where I did sort of fall off a little bit because I felt like my enjoyment was dropping, but I think I was just having a bad mental day because I went back and started playing it again, and man, I don't know what was wrong with me, because this is just a really fun game. Honestly, this might even be too low on the list, but I really just like all of the games in my top 10 a lot. Coming in at number 9 is Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. I'm not sure why I thought I was going to be able to resist the urge to play this game, but Fire Emblem 3 Houses is one of my favorite games of all time, so I had to check this out, even though in the past I know that the warrior style gameplay is not generally my jam. Being able to spend more time with this incredible cast of characters was more than enough for me though, and for most of the game, the warrior style gameplay was actually pretty fun. I do think that the game went on a bit long. I am saying that as somebody that did every single side quest and optional thing that you could do, but only doing one route, it took me like 40 to 45 hours to play, and I haven't even gone to play the second and third ones because that's just like so much time to sink into this game, but I was having a good time. I still don't think that I'm sold on playing other Warriors games as a whole. I don't think that it would work the same if I don't have the same sort of relation to the characters, but being able to see these characters more, and you know, it told a pretty interesting story. And it was fun to be able to sort of mix and match and mess around with the characters' classes and abilities. And this is just a solid video game. I am a fan. Coming in at number 8 might be one of the more underrated games of the year, and that is the Diofield Chronicle. The Diofield Chronicle is a strategy RPG that, honestly, I actually do draw a lot of comparisons to Fire Emblem 3 Hopes, just because of the way that you can sort of strategize who goes where, and you can have a sort of overview of the map, but instead of controlling one character, you just sort of have the overhead view and you control all 4 characters. This is another game where I felt like it went on a bit long, again saying that as somebody who did every single side quest, but something about this game really just strikes that itch for me. I've never quite seen a combat system like this, and I think the characters are very interesting. You play through the story, and I never really felt like I was 100% just playing as the good guys. I just sort of felt like I was playing as people trying to do, you know, certain things in the world, whether it's right, wrong, or in the middle. That it's sort of left up to interpretation, which I always felt was kind of interesting. I thought the early game, especially getting a handle on the mechanics, was actually pretty difficult, but once you sort of understand the mechanics and the ways to navigate through the combat and the levels in this game, it actually becomes very, very easy, which could be a bad thing, but at the same time, I feel like getting to the point where the game is easy is almost like a reward for just understanding all the game's mechanics. But this game, from what I hear, is actually getting an update in March that is supposed to add an even higher difficulty level, as well as add some extra missions for a branching story path. One of the bad things of the first-time player is there is 1 or 2 characters that do leave the party, and you get no sort of forewarning about it. So if you're putting a lot of time, energy, and resources into a specific character, you might be upset when they leave. But I don't think it's that big of a deal, just because generally you'll have another character that's able to fill in that spot, and the game does provide you another character that fits the exact same role, I think 1 chapter later. So you will have to go a few missions without a certain character, but they are somewhat replaceable, but that could be a downside, but I didn't really see it as that big of a deal. It did take me a while to sort of understand that you have to really just select the few units that you want to focus on. I tried to keep everybody at the same level, and I started to fall behind and get underleveled really quickly, but once I started focusing in, it got a lot better for me. This game sort of became my weird obsession lately, mostly because, A, it's very easy to get a platinum trophy. If you just sort of play through the game and do all the optional stuff, you will get an easy platinum trophy, which I am always down for. And I also saw that not a single other person has speedrun this game, so I did it myself, and I am currently the world record holder for the DioField Chronicle Casual New Game Any Percent. Yes, I sat down for almost 8 hours to do it, but nobody else did it, so yeah, take that, everyone else. But yeah, I don't really have that much else to say. I just really enjoyed this game, and I'm actually looking forward to playing even more of it, as crazy as that sounds. I've always been a gameplay over graphics kind of guy, and never has that been challenged more than with the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. But honestly, all that did was just confirm that opinion for me, because so far, Pokemon Violet is probably the most fun I've had in a Pokemon game since Gen 5, and I honestly did not think that was possible because I am a big fan of Gen 6, but I think I've had more fun with Pokemon Violet, which is insane to me. Does the game look incredible? No, not really, but honestly, I don't really care. The gameplay is still your classic Pokemon style, with a lot of cool little quality of life changes to really help streamline the process. There's also rewards that you can get along the way for adding to your Pokédex. Instead of just having one big reward at the end, you can get little rewards along the way, which is really cool. There are the 3 different missions that you can do. You have the gym leaders, you have the Titans, you have the Team Star bases, and all of them offer their own little storyline, especially the Titan ones with Arven. I mean, that was so good. I think that must be probably some of the best storylines that's happened in any Pokemon game ever. And I'm recording this actually before I've beaten the game, so I don't know how the Team Star storyline ends, but that's a really cool, unique twist on the concept, because, I mean, it's been a while since we've had a good evil team in Pokemon, and, I mean, Team Star isn't really evil from what I can tell, but it's a really cool take on a, you know, antagonistic group of characters. I found a lot of the gyms to be very refreshing and very cool. I like the terrestrializing mechanic that they take advantage of. They'll send out a Pokemon that's not the type that they match, and then they'll terrestrialize it to it, and usually take advantage of some sort of type matchup that would be super effective against you, which is really cool. Even though it only sometimes works out, I still think that the idea being there is very cool. The only real downside to this game for me is that there aren't that many memorable locations like there are in past Pokemon games, mostly because the open world all feels sort of samey. You're either in like a grasslands, a desert, a snowy area, or that's kind of basically it, and you know, it's hard to tell them apart from each other. There's trainers in the middle of nowhere that I've probably completely missed out on. And the world is not like super exciting to explore, but I like the streamlined process of going from place to place to place, and so it honestly doesn't really matter all that much to me. This is just a game that I find so hard to put down, and I'm having an incredible time with, and I can't wait to play it again and again and again, which is insane. But yeah, I will defend Pokemon Violet. I know I'm one of those people that me supporting this level of quality for Pokemon games means that they can just get away with that level of quality, and you know, if that makes me a bad person, so be it, but I can't help it. If I'm having fun with a video game, I'm not gonna lie and say I'm not. So Pokemon Violet, 7th best game of 2022. At number 6 is Plate Up, a game that was definitely not on my radar at all, but I saw some videos about it, some friends started playing it, and man, I got so hooked. This game is so much fun. It is hard to put down. It also offers a different play experience depending on if you're playing with other people or playing by yourself, and honestly, I find both to be very, very fun. There's a constant leveling up system where you can unlock more dishes to do. Even if you're doing runs where you're preparing the same dishes, you'll sometimes get different modifiers, and you can play around with overcoming certain challenges and trying different side dishes and trying different layouts of restaurants, and there's just so much stuff to do. I absolutely love this game. I've sunk way too much time into it, but I say too much and honestly not enough because I haven't played it in a while, and I really get the itch and I want to play more, especially because I think there was a recent update that added some holiday stuff, but I really just have nothing bad to say about this game. It is one of the most fun games that I've played of this year. My top 5 is just basically full of like almost 10 out of 10 video games, and so this one is just maybe one of the most fun, but just doesn't quite reach the top level. But if I could put it higher, I would. I've enjoyed every single second that I played of PlateUp. Starting off the top 5, I'm putting Rogue Legacy 2. This game was in early access for a while, but had its full release in 2022. So that's what I'm counting it as, and man, I love the original Rogue Legacy, and I just think that this game is even better. There's a lot of quality of life changes that sort of help streamline the process of going from area to area. There's even more classes, more abilities, more downsides, and just so many things that could happen. I just think that this game is streamlined so well. It is so satisfying to play. It is difficult. I still haven't beat it just with how difficult it is and how many times I've had to set it down just to be like, okay, let me pick it back up another day. And so I'm still working on it, but man, this has just been such an incredible experience. Rogue Legacy 2, if you have not checked it out, you absolutely need to, because I just don't see any way that they could have executed this better. They took the original game, which was fantastic, and just expanded on it even more so. It's hard to put it into more words than what I'm putting into now, but this is almost a 10 out of 10 like must-play game. It's so good. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Cult of the Lamb, and I'm going to be honest, I actually had this at number 3 for most of the year, but there was a sort of last-second change that we will get to. Cult of the Lamb is one of the most fun games. I really cannot tell you how many times I caught myself having a big, stupid smile playing this game because of the charm that it has. Getting your cult together of all the different creatures and, you know, interacting with them, holding the rituals and doing all that stuff. It's just so fun. And the gameplay is fine as well. It's nothing too, like, groundbreaking. It's actually pretty simple in terms of, you know, swing, dodge out of the way, learn the enemy attack patterns. It's still fun. The bosses are fun. Traversing and the combat is fun, but really just the combination of how everything works into itself is really what makes this game special for me. You go out and you can forage for like materials and different items, and you can use that to improve your base and add little structures that can then help you profit off of your followers, or, you know, you can help them. I was generally played as a pretty good leader. I wasn't really mean to any of them unless the game was giving me a quest where it was like, oh, you need to do this, which that was the only time. So there are ways to play this. You can be a good leader, you can be bad. The game gives you a lot of options of stuff you can do, and it's just so much fun, and that's really all it comes down to. This is just one of the most fun games, one of the most charming games, and one of the games that I just couldn't stop playing from when I started to when I beat it. It is just really an incredible experience that I enjoyed so much. So now we make it to the top 3. The top 3 that I assumed was going to be the top 3 even before the year began, but I didn't know what order they were going to be in. So starting off at number 3 is Triangle Strategy. And I mentioned that Cult of the Lamb was number 3, and it was over this game initially. But the more that I've just looked into Triangle Strategy and played more of, the more I just really respect the ambition that they have for this game. The different routes that you can take truly are different from each other, and there's a lot of decisions that do take you to different combat encounters, and even if some of the decisions do end up looping back around, it never really feels like your decisions don't matter. There's like 4 different endings that you can do, 3 of which are very obvious, and 1 where you have to do a lot of special things to get to a specific ending. But that just lets you play New Game Plus, and I have never been a New Game Plus guy, but Triangle Strategy offers a reason to play New Game Plus because, wow, it is difficult. It adds on to the difficulty. Even on normal mode, I was struggling in the first couple chapters of New Game Plus. It is very, very hard, and it really just challenges you to really take the mechanics that you've learned from the game and just do your best with that and conquer the challenges that come your way. It's really crazy, as there isn't really a ton of character customization, as every character gets a set ability that they get at a certain level, but you can always sort of mix and match which characters you want to use, which ones you want to put focus on, how you want to deploy them, and it just feels refreshing every single time, even if the characters aren't different. It's so weird how a game like this is replayable even though the characters aren't different, but I just really, really enjoy this game a lot. And even though the story was fine, what I really respect is the world building and the amount of effort that they put into it. It can be a bit much, where there will be times where it's like an hour to 2 hours of only cutscenes and story, like back to back to back. It can be kind of rough, kind of brutal, but I think especially once you've sort of seen some of the main plot points and on repeat playthroughs you can just kind of skip past it. It's not nearly as bad as it is at first, but I still respect the amount of effort they put into the world and the backstory of everybody. All the characters are good. You sort of understand everybody's motivations, and it's just a really, really solid game. Definitely one of my favorite strategy RPGs. If you're into these sorts of games and you've somehow missed out on this one, absolutely go play it. It is a must-play in my opinion. And now we made it to the top 2. The top 2 shouldn't surprise anybody, but what is the order going to be? When I made my picks for the Game Award, Elden Ring was the clear game of the year for me because I hadn't gotten around to playing God of War Ragnarok yet, but I have now, so where does that leave us? Do I stand by what I said? Have things changed? Well, before I give it away, let's go ahead and just talk about both of these games, because I do think that they are different. Elden Ring is an open-world Souls game with some of the most satisfying combat that I have ever experienced in any video game. It is unlike anything that I've played, and it's one of those games that the more you play, the more you appreciate the different weapons you can use, the different weapon arts. There's just so much replayability and customization you can do. They make it very easy to respec your stats if you want to go in a completely different direction. If you're at level 70 and you're wielding a big strength weapon and you decide that you want to become a sorcerer and start casting magic, you absolutely can. All it costs is a larval tier, and those are not too hard to find, so they are a little bit limited, but you can do that. So in that sort of sense, it is just fantastic, and God of War Ragnarok really just nailed the sort of narrative aspect while also having very satisfying combat. It improved on the first game in a lot of ways, and I'm already a big fan of the first game. So I'm really torn when it comes to these two games. But I think it's time to tell you my decision of which one is number 2 and which one is number 1. Even though, honestly, I feel like this is a more of a 1A and 1B situation, I will make an official pick here. My number 2 video game of 2022 is Elden Ring. I legitimately cannot believe I'm saying this, because Elden Ring is one of my favorite video games of all time. It took a little bit for a lot of things to click, but like I mentioned, the combat in this game is just so much fun. I really like the addition of the jump button to use jump attacks. The guard countering is really fun. Being able to power stance by wielding 2 weapons of the same type offers even more a diverse moveset, and the jump attacks with those is always really, really satisfying. The weapon variety, the weapon arts, the bosses, the soundtracks. Oh my gosh, some of the boss soundtracks are some of my favorite in all of video games. Some of the boss fights are some of my favorite in all of video games. There's just so much to love about this game, and I do think that this is a more replayable game than God of War Ragnarok, but I just think that there are a couple things that probably keep this from being an overwhelming number 1 for me. There are a couple of rough patches in this game, a couple of bosses that are really, really tough, and really having one of my least favorite final bosses of any video game ever. It can definitely be hard to figure out where to go and what's worth getting and what's not worth getting. I definitely needed a guide to make sure that I didn't miss out on any of the bosses. Trying to accurately keep up with all of the side quests is nearly impossible. And it's not like those are all bad things, but there are just some things that probably could have been just a little bit better just to make this just an absolutely overwhelming number one for me. But I don't regret picking it for Game of the Year. I do think that it still deserves it. It is really on par with God of War Ragnarok, but I guess now it's time to talk about that game, huh? Yeah, I'm surprised. My 2022 Game of the Year is God of War Ragnarok. I am speechless at just how incredible this video game was. I had trouble breathing at the end, near the end of the game, because I was just so taken aback with everything that was happening that I was forgetting to breathe. It's such a weird experience that I had. I've never ever been gripped by a narrative ever as much as I was in God of War Ragnarok. I think I just really appreciated the journeys that the characters were going on. I liked the way that it was setting up different factions and different sides as to what they're doing, and it just really felt like every character was real and alive in the world and doing their own plans to try and accomplish their own goals. Atreus' journey is something that specifically was really, really cool to witness. I just didn't know what to expect going into this game, and I am just completely blown away. I don't really say this lately, but I really think that God of War Ragnarok might be a perfect video game. When I try to think of any sort of faults or downsides of the game, I really can't think of any. There might be a couple puzzles that aren't my favorite. Maybe there's some post-game stuff that, could have been done better. But I truly, truly find it hard to believe that anybody can make a narratively driven third-person action RPG better than this game. I just don't know if it can ever happen. And the only reason that I don't confidently say this is my favorite game of all time is just because I have other subjective tastes that would put games maybe a little bit higher than this, but this is very close to the top, and I really hope this isn't just recency bias talking, because I just thought this game was incredible, and I think I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time. I adore this game, and I am not ashamed to say that God of War Ragnarok is my official pick for Game of the Year 2022. And wow, there we have it. I ranked every video game that I played this year from worst to best. If you stuck around for this whole thing, I appreciate you so much. You have no idea. I was very passionate about making this video, and I put a lot of effort into making this, so hopefully that came through. Let me know what some of your favorites and least favorite games of the year were, and make sure to subscribe because I have a lot of great stuff planned for 2023 as well. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of your hair. Thank you for your time, and I will see y'all around. So till then, peace out.